When you think of evil gaming company, one instantly comes to mind: EA. EA has been at the forefront of evil gaming practices that involve trying to make them more and more money, at the cost of their own reputation. In this video, we're taking a deeper look into how bad EA actually are, and if a sale or merger could actually save them. But before that, let's take a trip back in time when EA didn't suck. EA contributed to a lot of my gaming as a kid, with fun games like SSX Tricky, FIFA, Need for Speed, NBA Street, and these oddly great Lord of the Rings games. Specifically, the Two Towers one, and anything Maxis of course, Sim Golf for the win. There is probably more as well, since EA launched a lot of games from 2000 to 2008. And you know, I could really be totally wrong about EA being good back then. I was 11 in 2000. But what I do know is that there were no loot boxes, no microtransactions. And this made EA kind of focus on putting out some really good, fun, decent games, where the gameplay was put first. Were some simple? Sure. But I would put hours and hours into these games just because they were super enjoyable, and the experience of playing was awesome. One of my favorite games growing up was FIFA, which is sad since FIFA was EA's first entry into the loot box, and would forever change gaming. EA introduced Ultimate Team in FIFA 07, but at the time the packs weren't profitable, as they weren't bought with real money. EA almost scrapped the idea completely, but a certain EA executive producer saw the potential all those years ago, and an evil light bulb flicked on. That executive producer was none other than Andrew Wilson, who fittingly became EA's CEO 4 years later, and still remains as such. With the success of Ultimate Team, EA would become vampire-esque, as their first taste of money would increase their hunger for more. EA would go on and implement this practice into, well, every game they owned, and gave us some of the worst money grab attempts in gaming history. EA's loot box system would eventually expand past their own games as everyone wanted a piece of the pie, notably Counter-Strike, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Assassin's Creed. The world did take notice of these practices though, and some countries like the Netherlands attempted to ban FIFA from their country in 2020 over the fact that loot boxes were seen as a form of gambling for children. This was overturned as the court said that packs aren't a standalone game. The vast majority of packs are obtained by and used for game participation, and they are not a game of chance, and do not require a license. Not a game of chance, huh? Glad I pulled all those Messis in every pack, or even anything over an 85. The money-sucking EA might have created the golden ticket, but it's also a two-way sword. EA put so much focus on microtransactions that their games inevitably started paying the price. It's more prominent in their sports titles, namely FIFA and Madden. Yearly releases and a promise of more realism are two of the main things you can bet EA to bring to such titles. But the issue is they solely focus on Ultimate Team part of the game, and nothing else. Fans beg for career mode updates and it never happens. But we get new ball physics and player emotions, right? Psych, because EA barely changes anything about the game. They literally all feel exactly the same year after year. EA's new sports releases are just roster updates with false promises. EA does nothing to innovate these games, but they sure make a lot of new Ultimate Team cards, right? And this is the reason why EA has been solely focused on online multiplayer games these past couple years. You have the Battlefield series, which by the Storm of Hate 2042 received, should let you know how that ended up. The aforementioned Anthem, which was supposed to be EA's Destiny, where they could milk gamers for their money. And Apex Legends, which honestly is quite fun, and it feels the most balanced out of the battle royales. But it exists solely to sell skins and more loot boxes. Besides these games, the sports titles and some sim stuff, this has been EA's focus for the last couple years. And you can tell EA is completely out of touch with players from this simple tweet. And if you don't know, the joke is that EA hates single player games because, well, it's pretty difficult to throw loot boxes into a single player game and make money. So EA doesn't bother making them. Just look at Battlefield 2042. They didn't even bother making a campaign mode for the game. The worst part is, one, EA owns one of the best single player studios to ever exist, BioWare, who created the best RPG of all time, KOTOR. But sadly, you can see a decline in BioWare's ability since EA bought them, which is a shame because BioWare was immense back in the day. This is a whole separate issue that I'll get into after this, but EA had some really good single player games back in the day. Medal of Honor, Dead Space, The Sims, and Mass Effect. And looking back 3 years ago, not only they created one of the best Star Wars game ever, but one of the best single player games in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This surprised gamers as no one really had any faith in its success. Good job Respawn Entertainment. And secondly, it made people upset as to why EA couldn't make games like this before. And on the subject of Star Wars, EA had the Star Wars license for 10 long years. In that amount of time, they created only 4 games: Battlefront, Squadrons, Fallen Order, and Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, the mobile game. Not a really good look for one of the greatest IPs ever created. EA had the opportunity to make all the money in the world, but they squandered their chances because they couldn't figure out how to create a game to monetize gamers. Except Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Squadrons wasn't that good. Battlefield had so many issues that it was a waste. And Fallen Order was the only good thing to come out, and that was basically right before their license expired. Now, you might have noticed I did not count SWTOR, and that is because BioWare created that before the purchase of EA, who would then go on and murder the studio into oblivion. This is probably EA's most heinous crime as a company, and something they've done for a very, very long time. They buy successful studios for their franchises, then run them into the ground, ruining everything great about the game, and then shutting down said studio when the game doesn't turn out well. Some examples of these include Pandemic Studios, who is best known for the creator of Star Wars Battlefront in 2004, who then released Battlefront in 2005 before EA bought them. But after being purchased by EA, Pandemic could no longer make any Star Wars games. So EA had them make a Dark Knights game, which went through a lot of issues, which led EA to firing 1,500 workers for budget cuts, and then shut down Pandemic Studios and used DICE to make Battlefront. The creators of Command & Conquer games, Westwood Studios, would be purchased by EA in 1998, but after one bad release of Command & Conquer Renegade in 2002, EA shut them down. Steven Spielberg's DreamWorks Interactive, that was best known for the Medal of Honor series in 1999, was purchased by EA in 2001, but EA made them churn out more and more Medal of Honor games, which were actually becoming worse and worse. And then they let them make more Command & Conquer games before shutting them down in 2013. And Mythic. Mythic is best known for creating the best MMO ever, no bias, Dark Age of Camelot. EA purchased Mythic in 2006. In 2009, for some odd reason, EA merged them with BioWare and released Dragon Age 2 as BioWare Mythic. Mythic would go back to their original name and release Dungeon Keeper. It performed badly, and EA shut them down. After hearing about these evils of EA, surely nobody would like to have their bad press under their umbrella. But the money EA makes sure does help. Let's get Microsoft and Sony out of the way first. I have zero doubts that Microsoft would love to purchase EA. All those games in Game Pass is a perfect recipe for them. But with the purchase of Activision Blizzard, I don't think the industry will allow such a thing to happen. And when it comes to Sony, EA might be too expensive for them. But adding EA games to their PS Plus Now catalog could really help them sell some subscriptions. Now, the real contenders are supposedly Disney, Amazon, and Apple. I personally don't think Apple will do it, so that leaves Disney and Amazon. Disney does make some sense since they own Star Wars, but EA lost their exclusivity contract, so that doesn't really matter. Disney could start making more Disney games with all those studios, or somehow incorporate them into their parks, so it could work out for them. Personally, I believe Amazon will be the one that buys EA. They are trying to break into the gaming scene, although New World didn't go well for them, but buying EA would give them a huge amount of ability to really make whatever they want. And also, Amazon is not short on money, so buying EA won't hurt them in that department. The kicker here though is that EA is primarily interested in a merger that would allow Wilson to remain as chief executive of the combined company. Now, this alone might be the reason they won't get a deal. Wilson is trying to become the executive of whoever wants a merger, and not an outright sale. With him trying to stay as the chief executive of both companies in the merger, I would be highly skeptical of anyone trying to do that deal. EA won't change with him at the helm, and he could ruin the company that merges with them. Whoever ends up making the deal with the devil will have a ton of work cut out for them, whether it's a sale or a merger, and more so if it is a merger. They have the resources, they just need to be in the hands of another. Their dark past may pose an issue for whoever is looking at a deal. EA did win multiple Worst Companies in the World award for a reason, and turning public perception is going to be an uphill battle. Check out this video here for another epic downfall.